Hey, I'm Liz from Cellomoji.com, and I'm here to talk to you today about popper number 15. Here are just a few practice tips to help you really master this etude. A lot of these are going to refer to some of the TMEA cuts for the All Regions auditions. I think that these will just really help you master these cuts and make your audition go smoothly. If you're new to this channel, thanks for stopping by. Press the subscribe button below and you'll always be up to date on the newest videos that come out on this channel. I'll also leave links below to the music and the tools that I'm referring to in this video. So the first tip is use a metronome. So it doesn't quite matter which stage of learning this etude you're in, using a metronome is going to be so helpful. If there's one thing that you can find even within that first excerpt of popper number 15 is that as you're getting closer to the bottom of that first page, it's often going to speed up because of course it's the easier section of the etude. TMEA actually really states the tempo that they want, which is 92 to 100 for the quarter note, so you should be practicing with that. It'll help you stay really steady, and the longer that you can practice with just a nice steady beat, the better off you'll be. Tip number 2, your bow stroke. Now, there are so many interpretations of what a dotted note should be, like how short it should be it flying off the string, should it be more brushy stroke. I think that can kind of be a little bit of a personal interpretation. Of course, always check with your private teacher on this, but I would say the more important thing is to make sure that your bow stroke is consistent all the way through the excerpts, both excerpts. You'll find that when it gets louder, that our stroke will change a little bit. When you get to that double stop section, again, the bow stroke will change. So it's really important that you just lock onto a stroke that you really like, that makes a good tone, and something that you can sustain all the way through both excerpts. Along with the bow stroke, it's really important to pay attention to your left hand articulation. Now, this will just add to the clarity of the sound that's coming out. If your left hand is really working hard on being precise, on making sure it's really right on top of those notes and not smudging around, then that will really help enhance your bow stroke and add to the clarity. Tip number 3, shifting practice. Okay, we all know this etude has a lot of chromatic sections. Even just the first few measures, you can see there's the shifting practice that you need to do. So make sure that after you've figured out what these notes are and you have more confidence on where they are, that you are actually practicing the shift itself. So that's usually the note before the shift, the note after the shift, and you're practicing that shift in this final speed that you want this whole excerpt to go. So it's all well and good to practice it slow when you're first figuring out what your hand needs to do. But eventually you need to practice playing it up to speed so that you can build up that muscle memory and get better consistency with your intonation. Tip number 4. So this also sort of tags on to the intonation. Hopefully you are practicing the scales that are associated with the etude. So the major version and the associated minor and the arpeggios that are with this etude are so important because it's just going to help your intonation be better. And for sure, you know, it's always important to know your 2 octaves, but obviously since a lot of this is in thumb position, you should also be practicing your 3rd and 4th octaves for these scales as well. Tip number 5, those harmonics. Now, you know which ones I'm talking about. Trust me when I say the harmonics will actually speak just fine. It's actually the note before the harmonics that you want to be careful of. So because we're so concerned about reaching these high harmonics, oftentimes we're just sort of whiffing over the note before it. But if you are really solid playing the note before the harmonic, before you shift, you're going to find that the harmonics themselves are going to be a lot more solid. Plus, the intonation is actually a lot more obvious on those notes than the harmonics themselves. So make sure you're really listening to the intonation there and that you're nailing those notes before the harmonic. You'll just feel more secure and they're going to speak for you almost every single time. Tip number 6, those pesky double stops. You know which ones I'm talking about. So there are many different ways you can practice double stops. but the way that I like to do it is sort of in 3 steps. So the first step will be practicing the upper note. Now, when I'm practicing the upper note, I ghost the lower note. So my left hand is actually playing the double stop itself. However, my bow is only playing the upper note. So that way I can really concentrate on the intonation of the upper note, making sure that's really in tune. Then, the next time through, I practice the lower note. So again, my left hand is playing the double stop, so both fingers are in the right places, but then I'm really concentrating on the intonation of the lower note. Finally, as step number 3, I divide the double stop and then I play them together. So usually for thirds, I do the lower note, then the upper note, then I play them together. It's important to sort of make sure that individual notes are in tune, and then playing them together will really sort of drill into your ear what it will sound like when it is in tune. No matter which way you practice your double stops, really make sure you're practicing them and trying to be as accurate as possible in those, because if there's one section of these 2 excerpts that might get you, it might be the double stops, because they're very challenging. Now, referring back to tip number 2 when I was talking about the bow strokes, really pay attention to the bow stroke here in the double stops. Our first instinct is when we're playing more than one note is we tend to bear down. We tend to be a little bit crunchy with our sound because we're thinking, oh, I have to play 2 notes and they're, it's loud and all of these things. So make sure instead that you're really trying to grab onto and focus on the bow stroke that you had decided on. And just know, double stops is just a change in the angle of the bow. All you have to do is tilt it so that you can hear both notes equally. It does not mean you have to work any harder to produce the sound for the double stops. Tip number 7, rhythm practice. So in any situation where there are continuous notes that are supposed to sound even, rhythm practice is pretty essential. The way I like to do it is usually long, short, long, short, long, short, and then reverse it, short, long, short, long, short, long. Now in this case it's a 6/8 time, so in this case you can do a little bit of a variation. So I usually do it in groups of 3s. So the first note will be long, 2 and 3 are short, and then the second note is long, where 1 and 3 are short, and then finally the third note is long and the other 2 are short. Bonus tips. So there are not very many dynamics or phrase markings in this Popper etude. So be sure to just sort of pay attention to the ones that are there. And then on top of it, you can sort of add your own little take on some of these phrasings as well. There's no need to play sort of a monotone etude because no one really wants to listen to that. So go for the obvious phrasings, like if the line is going up higher, more likely than not it's a crescendo. If it's coming down, it's probably a diminuendo. If there are 2 phrases that are happening that are identical, probably one of them is going to be loud and one of them is going to be an echo. So make sure you're thinking about these sort of obvious phrasings once you're feeling really comfortable with the intonation and the rhythms. My final tip to you is just remember that music itself is such a subjective art. So whoever is listening to you is going to have their own ideas and opinions of what they think should be the proper way of playing this etude. Try not to be too discouraged if someone gives an opinion that you may not agree with, and that is just what art and music is. Instead, really concentrate on just being proud and happy of all the hard work that you put into this etude and how you're feeling when you're playing it and performing it. So definitely make sure that you are checking in with your teacher, maybe give sort of mock playthroughs with your friends and just play for each other. So give yourself an idea of what maybe some other people are looking for. Above all, make sure that you're just having fun when you're playing this. Etudes are grueling, and Popper etudes are no joke. They're definitely a challenging set of etudes, which is why it is such a standard in cello music. So those are my tips for Popper number 15 relating to the TMEA auditions that are coming up. Good luck to everyone who is taking these auditions. You are really taking on some tough etudes here. Keep an eye out in the future. I will definitely put out some tips for the Merc etude. Thanks again for watching, and if you like this video, subscribe below. so that you don't miss out on any other videos in the future. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye!